Hey watercolor wizards, Hajra here. Last time I did some original inky owls for Halloween. Now I'm going to paint them, which should be just as spooktacular. As usual, video scripts, project sketches, art blogs, deconstructed painting posts, and more rewards are available for my patrons on Patreon. So I started out on the little devil owl. I did the little devil shirt with red and also some white pen textural pattern to make it look more posh, and so it stood apart from his other red attire. And he's not wearing pants, so we didn't have to worry about those. I was actually initially using Inktense, but apart from the red Inktense block I had already started using, I switched painting all my other colors to Neocolor 2 and Aqua Stick watercolor pastels. And this is because this paper, as I mentioned before, is that thin Twinchy cardstock, so no gelatin sizing, no cotton fiber, just an unblendable wood pulp surface that bleeds a lot. Even though cardstock is no good for watercolor blending, it also suffers from wet color bleeds, which is super annoying. Luckily, I was still able to have fun painting these owls by doing most of my painting wet on dry and using a project and temper-saving white gel pen, which is just white gouache and a pen basically, for corrections and highlights. The bleeds happen around the eye area a lot, and the white pen corrections really saved these little owls, otherwise I'd have to redraw and re-ink them on watercolor paper. I wanted the little witch to have really magical little clothing, but it wasn't possible to do true gradients in watercolor on this paper like I wanted, but I tried to add in lighter and darker blues and purples and a bit of black to give some small amount of depth. The brooch with the start of the cloak pinned to it was really nice, and doing little stars and moons on her outfit finished it all off. And she's a Hufflepuff, in case you're wondering, though she could have just as likely ended up in Ravenclaw. Watercolor pastels, also called watercolor crayons, can be used like I always use them, like watercolor paint from a palette. They have a waxy, oily binder, unlike conventional watercolor, that facilitates them moving across an unsized paper like cardstock better. It's basically like using water-soluble oil paints. The inks and other transparent staining watercolors I have would have been more frustrating to work with on this cheap paper, as they would just sink in almost instantly, resulting in indelible hard edges in unwanted places. Painting with the watercolor crayons, as I discovered when I did a Muha study on cardstock from a coloring book, gives me just a smidgen more time to scoot the color around before it dries hard-edged. The ghost was the easiest to do, just some blue shadows on the sheet and what little showed of the owl feet and bottom. I decided to make his eyeballs yellow to make him more ghost-like, and it added a pop of color in the center too. So here's the Dracula. I made him blue-white to signal his vampire skin. The widow's peak hair really signals who he is, along with the fangs and cape collar. The blood smeared on his little face and the insane wells around his eyes, which already had double lines with ink on one side to make him look more batty, were icing on the cake. He really is the cutest vampire ever. Again, the white gel pen was essential for those annoying bleeds on this cardstock. Luckily, old Vampy here is a bluish white, so modifying the blood was an easy fix that blended right in. The white gel pen looks natural if I used a damp brush to fade the white in a bit. I only left the white hard-edged and full brightness for pupil highlight dotting. Everywhere else, in correction areas, it was faded and blended in. Next was little Gypsy Katrina, and she has a palette very reminiscent of a certain Disney animated heroine, as the exotic scarf colors and gold jewelry are pretty iconic for a gypsy look. It's subtle, but I also made her eyes smoky. She has to have her Godgel eyeliner. The pumpkin costume is pretty straightforward, and it was nice to get a big orange squash on one bird to really signal that they're dressed up for a fall holiday. I also decided to make most of the owls have brown feathers. I was debating also making them in tan and gray and other owl colors, but I felt the costumes were so colorful that a brown owl would be a nice repeat base color. Plus, two of the owls needed corpsey pallor makeup for their costumes, so I knew that would automatically shake up the base owl color a bit. For the Bride of Frankenstein, I managed to get some wet blended lines in her hair, though again, these pieces had to be done mostly wet on dry due to the paper. I made the skin a Frankenstein greenish white this time to make it different from the Dracula bluish white. I was lucky these owls were also so teeny because I could follow a wet edge and fill a whole shape area quickly before the color dried in a hard edge. And of course I had to do her beak in that old silver screen era brownish maroon lipstick color. And I ended with the little pirate, and I tried to think of all the classic Treasure Island pirate clothes colors. He's one of the few owls wearing pants at his center breast area rather than a shirt. You can see that he has a green vest and blue striped shirt on the sides, and then the breastplate area in the center actually has his patched black and green pants. The colors are predictably less vibrant on the cardstock than they would be on watercolor paper, and that's because paper doesn't just affect how you can blend and paint, and if you can add water, but also how saturated or unsaturated the end product is. With watercolor paper, more of the pigment floats on top, making everything more vibrant. I'm still never using this paper again, but luckily these little owls were some of the simplest things I've drawn and painted, so they all turned out fine. And the toned down colors look awesome for a spooky nighttime Halloween costume vibe. Just like it happened a few times with the small eye areas, there was a bleed by his stitches, but again, the white gel pen came to the rescue. For the eyeball bleeds, or the bleed on the vampire's white skin, I did just leave the pen white. But for areas like the pirate stitches, I had to go back and add some brown over it and mix it in to make it more the local color brown. And it's okay if there's a bit of gradation there, it just makes it look like he's got a raised brow area because he is a horned owl. So here's the whole adorable group all done, and I hope you guys had a great time. So wizards, which one of these little owls in costume was your favorite? I'll be posting these as stickers on Redbubble for anyone who wants to have these cute birds at their house for the holidays too. Thanks for parking your brushes here. Please like, subscribe, and check out my website links and Patreon page to support this art channel below. If you're already my patron, thanks for being an excellent owl. If you're interested in buying my originals or prints, please email me or visit my website for info. Until next time, wishing you all magical painting adventures.